And as you saw from the program, I'm delighted to welcome Giles Robinson.
That's the one.
Giles Robinson. And I'll hand over to you to make a dry subject as interesting as possible.
I'll do my best. I'm probably easier if I stand up. I normally do these things standing up. Yeah, thank you very much all, obviously, for coming along. As you very kindly put it there, it's not the most exciting subject, so I appreciate that. Thank you all for coming. Although it's not the most exciting of subjects, unfortunately for a lot of people and a lot of businesses, automatic enrolment is a very important subject, something that they really need to know a lot about. Despite that, we're still finding a lot of employers and individuals burying their heads in the sands and just really not getting on with this, which is perhaps the worst thing you can do. As I run through it today, you'll find out there's a lot to think about, perhaps not a lot to do, but certainly a lot to think about, a few decisions to make. So, of course, the earlier you get started with that, the easier it'll be for you as an individual or business. Being such a small group, if you've got any questions as we go through, please fire away. You won't put me off or anything. Absolutely fine to answer questions as we go through. It can be quite a complex subject. Pensions, in fact, I think we have invented our own language entirely. Pensions is a language unto itself. So if you need me to explain anything, of course, I'm more than happy to do that. Three things I wanted to cover. So firstly, auto-enrolment. So this new piece of legislation, what is it? What does it mean? Then once we know what it is, really, what can we do about it? And then if it is something that perhaps you need to be thinking about yourself, where to get help and the ability to do it yourself, as it were. So anybody actually, just out of curiosity, had to deal with this yet? Anybody in a business or been part of a business where they've been automatically enrolled or had to deal with that in the past? Fantastic. One. Brilliant stuff. Okay, good. So all very new to it then. Automatic enrolment then. Kicked off back in October, in 2012, and auto-enrolment, in a nutshell, is the requirement of every single business in the UK with at least one employee to, at some point, automatically enroll their eligible workforce. So that takes an assessment. They need to assess their employees against a preset criteria, and if you fit that criteria, put those employees into a qualifying workplace pension scheme. And in a nutshell, that's it. You're looking at your employees, and it's not new information that we're looking at here. You're looking at your employees, and then you're, if applicable, putting them into a pension scheme. Unlike in the past, where a lot of employers have offered pensions, however, it's not a case of offering it. If the employee fits the criteria, you're automatically putting them into that pension, and it's the employee's choice whether they stay or not. If they're in the pension, chances are you're also going to be obliged to make contributions on their behalf. So that's a bit of cash from your pocket that of course, you'll now have to find. As I say, started back in 2012, so this is where we had the biggest businesses start. So October 2012, the big guys, your Asda's, your Tesco's, etc., with thousands and thousands of employees, they'll have had to start thinking and dealing with automatic enrolment. But it's been introduced in stages. So the smaller your business, the further away your staging date was. So for the bulk majority of PA employers that I deal with, and charities and similar individuals who employ a very small number of individuals, it's not likely to be until sort of the end of this year, next year, and through until 2017. So at latest, we're talking into 2017, start of 2018. But obviously, as I say, the sooner you can start thinking about this and putting plans in place, the easier it will be. How long? Well, normally we suggest around 12 to 18 months to plan for it. Of course, however, over the last few years, I've been dealing with big businesses, so they've got a lot to think about. When you've got a lot of employees, just changing a couple of addresses can be an absolute nightmare. With yourself, perhaps you might have just a couple of individuals, so it might not be such an issue. It can be done within a few months, but if you do give yourself that 12 to 18-month lead-in time, it gives you more options, and I'll explain a bit more about the options and how limited they can be in just a sec. Before that, though, a little bit of background as to why you should start thinking about early is really just volume. As I said, every single employer in the UK with at least one employee will have to deal with this at some stage. Last year, I'm a qualified financial advisor, so what I do on a day-to-day basis can often be just dealing with individuals and their private pensions. I would go to an insurance company and I'd ask them for something very simple, maybe a benefit statement. How much does this individual have in their pension at any one particular time? That would take them around, because they like to take their time on these things, around 5 to 10 working days to get that out to me. Now I'll be lucky if I can get them on the phone in the first place. And now we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks before we get anything out in the post. And why? Because they're busy dealing with this legislation. Last year, we had our busiest year. We had 30,000 businesses hit their staging date. This year, we're expecting just over 150,000 businesses to hit their staging date. And next year, which may be applicable for the bulk majority of individuals here, if you're looking for help, trying to find a pension, et cetera, you'll be contending with just over 500,000 businesses hitting their staging date. So the numbers just keep increasing. So again, the earlier you can start thinking about it, perhaps the more options you'll have, even if it is just trying to get, it takes a year and a half to get through to the pension provider, perhaps, I don't know. So automatic enrolment then, as I say, it's an assessment of your workforce. It's not new information. If you employ somebody, you need to know two very critical things, and that's how much do you pay them, which I'm sure you'll know, and how old they are. That's it. That's all we need for automatic enrolment. What we're looking at for somebody to be an eligible employee is being between the ages of 22 and state pension age and earning the equivalent of about £10,000 a year. It may sound like quite a lot of money, but if you break that down, so we're talking about £192 a week. So that might not, maybe you pay your employees, I don't know, maybe you have some you're just paying £150 a week, but we're looking at this in isolated periods. So just a couple of thoughts from a few individuals here. Anybody have their own employees that they have at the moment? How often do you pay them? Is it weekly, monthly? Monthly, weekly? 4 weekly, yeah, brilliant. 4 weekly and monthly, much better than weekly. Your assessment is just not at your staging date, it's every single time you pay your employees. So if it is monthly, every single time you pay your employees at that month, you need to assess them against this criteria. So what's that, about 800 and somewhat pounds a month that you'd have to hit the trigger. So you pay them £700 a month right the way through to November, and in December, because you're a really nice employer, you give them a Christmas bonus, which in that month takes them over that threshold, and boom, they're an eligible employee for that month. As soon as you have an eligible employee, you need to make, well, you need to put them into a pension and make them an active member of a qualifying workplace pension scheme. So this is just not going to happen at your staging date. This is every single time you run payroll. And that's not all. Not only do we have an eligible employee, we have a non-eligible employee. Again, pension language with lots of different phrases for different people, but a non-eligible employee is anybody that is perhaps out with the age range. So let's say they're under 22 or older than state pension age, or perhaps they don't quite earn enough. If you have these employees, you're not obliged to put them in your pension, not straight away, you're not automatically enrolling them, but you have to communicate with them, and if they choose to, they can join your pension, and if they choose to join your pension, then you're legally obliged to make pension contributions on their behalf. Okay? Finally, we have an entitled worker. A bit of a weird one in the legislation here. We're still not sure what they're actually entitled to. This is anybody earning below £5,824 a year, or again, the monthly, weekly, 4-weekly equivalent. If you have any of these entitled workers, you're not legally obliged to put them in your pension, but you still need to communicate them to tell them that a pension is available, and if they want to, they have access to the pension that you provide on their behalf. The difference with this category is that you're not obliged to make contributions on their behalf. So you've got the three categories there. So we've got an eligible job holder. You need to write to them to tell them that, guess what, I've put you in a pension, and we're going to start contributions. You've got a non-eligible job holder. These guys are out with the age range, or perhaps they don't quite earn enough. You're communicating with them and giving them the option to join your pension, and if they do, you're obliged to make contributions. And then we have an entitled worker. So this is anybody earning just below the limit there, so 5,824 being the limit. If you earn below that, you are entitled to join a pension scheme, but you as an employer, you're not obliged to make contributions on that individual's behalf, so they can pay whatever they fancy. Of course.
You give that example of kind of up to November and then somebody suddenly in December
Yep.
becomes eligible. If in January their wages go down to below the £800 a month,
Yep.
how do you stop?
Okay, so this is where it starts to get really interesting, and why the first bit I come on to when I say about dealing with it is processing and basically record keeping. Automatic enrolment, I say as a piece of legislation, is about 20% pensions and about 80% administration. So yeah, theoretically, if somebody joined your pension in December because they're automatically enrolled, and then in January their earnings fell below £800, if they're an active member at that time, they continue to be an active member. You'll continue to take contributions from them. So that would just continue forevermore, as it were. They could still come out, and there's lots of ways of dealing with this to how can I put it, minimize the work. So in that circumstance, perhaps something you might look to do is to utilize what we would call postponement. So there's lots of different fancy words here, but within the legislation, there's ways of managing the administration. One of these is postponement. When somebody becomes an eligible employee, whether that's they've just joined your business for the first time, or whether they've hit the age trigger, so they've gone from being 21 to 22, or it's just one particular month they've just had that spike in earnings, you can use a facility known as postponement, and postponement allows you to reassess them in 3 months' time. So you're not making contributions during that time, you're writing to them. So again, you still need the communication piece here. You still need to say, Mr. Employee, we are going to look at you again in 3 months' time. It could be anywhere within that 3 months, but assuming we're using the maximum, push it out for 3 months' time, because you know, as an employer, in 3 months' time, that employee's pay is likely to have leveled out, reduced again, and of course, when you reassess them, they're a non-eligible or an entitled worker. Great, you don't have any entitled to them. Furthermore, of course, they could then become an eligible job holder in the future, and you go through that same cycle all over again. So it's a little bit of an ongoing administration piece, but yes, there's ways of minimizing that.
See this earning threshold?
Yes.
If one PA is working for one employer earning, say, £400, and for the other employer they're earning £500,
Yes.
whose responsibility would that be then?
No, lovely. I keep these questions coming. Good, that's going to really help me here. Okay, so when we talk about an employee for your business, it is simply that. You're looking at them in isolation. So they might do 200 hours a week, if there was such a thing, Asda, Tesco, wherever they happen to work, and then they work for you for a few hours. You're just looking at how much they earn. They might have a pension elsewhere, so they may not want to join your pension, but you still have to look at them entirely in isolation. If they hit the trigger, you have to make an arrangement for them to be put into the pension because they're an eligible job holder and begin contributions. Once you've begun contributions, though, it's not a legal obligation of the employee to stay. They can do what we would refer to as opt-out. So once you've put an employee into a pension, or even under the option there of a non-eligible job holder to put themselves in, they still have a 30-day, I guess you'd call it a cooling-off period. So once you've put somebody into your pension, within 30 days, they can bring themselves out of the pension. This is where we start to go into more in depth with the administration of this, because they can't come to you to do that. They really need to go to a third party. So this is where we're now going to talk about the administration piece, because they need somewhere they can go for that to then flag to you to tell them they don't want to be in the pension anymore. That needs to be documented, because the regulator's being very big brother about this, making sure that everybody that's entitled to have a pension has one. But an employee is not obliged to stay in it. They can come out, of course, if perhaps in that example there, they have employment and they've got a fantastic pension elsewhere. They might not want to be in your pension, of course.
Groups like the SDS Forum are good. They do two things. They enable people with similar life experiences to come together and share their experience and realise that they're not alone and learn good ways to do things and better ways to do things. They're also good for advocating for people in that position. They can create a common voice that says, this is our experience as a carer, this is our experience as a parent, this is what we need, this is